Hello everybody, Hunter V Norris here, and today I'm bringing you my new review of Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. Dunkirk takes place during the Dunkirk evacuation during World War II, told from three different perspectives, land, sea, and air, over their own time periods, 1 week, 1 day, and 1 hour respectively. On land, British Army privates Tommy and Gibson attempt to escape the beaches of Dunkirk in France as they try to survive constant attacks from the German Air Force and Navy. On sea, civilian Mr. Dawson, his teenage son Peter, and his friend George join the British Navy across the English Channel to rescue the stranded soldiers. In the air, Royal Air Force pilot Farrier and his team fly to the evacuation point to assist the escaping troops. All of these actions lead to the miracle of Dunkirk. One of the big things Christopher Nolan has made himself known for ever since The Dark Knight are his incredibly long run times. He loves big ideas with lots of spectacle, where the characters sit around and discuss the ethics and moral dilemmas surrounding them. There's no respite to be found here in Dunkirk. From the opening scene, we're dropped right into the action with young British soldiers running from gunfire through the cities, and it never lets up from there. It's a constant race against time and a fight against death for every character, where even Hans Zimmer's score, or the work of one of his pupils, who even knows these days, is a ticking clock, constantly keeping you on edge. Along with the soldiers, you never feel safe, as quiet scenes will suddenly be interrupted by a hail of gunfire. Nolan spends no time on fluff here, with every scene moving the plot forward in some way. There's very little dialogue, where characters only speak when they need to, and their actions really do all the talking. As the film goes on, you can really see the toll this event is taking on all of our characters, especially for our three young soldiers on the beach as their minds slowly get lost. You of course expect great performances from Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, and Mark Rylance, but our newcomers, which actually features Harry Styles of One Direction fame, are all fantastic too. Everybody perfectly embodies the fear and paranoia one would feel in this situation. They feel logical in their actions and motivations to where people will do anything they can to survive, but also help others out. The different perspectives were a great way at representing how war is fought from everybody doing their own little part, and how sometimes the man who saves your life is somebody you'll never actually meet. Each perspective has its own little story going on, which helped provide a lot of different angles to examine warfare from, while keeping each aspect distinct and interesting. This method of telling the story does occasionally get confusing, as it constantly cuts back and forth from the different points of view, usually taking place at a completely different time. I've always found the editing to be the weakest aspect of Nolan's films, and his go-to editor Lee Smith delivers his standard fare of abrupt cuts, nonsensical transitions, and unnecessary cutaways to overacting extras. His editing doesn't really help the story format at all, especially with the bizarrely edited last scene that left me more baffled than emotional. I couldn't help but think that this way of telling the story lessened some of the emotional impact, especially when everything was resolving. It felt odd to have the resolution arrive in one story, only for us to cut back to some action that previously happened in the next scene. I was invested in the characters and the themes of their stories, but didn't feel fully emotionally satisfied by the end. Most of my emotions came from the fact that something this incredible actually happened in the first place. The way the story is told works for the most part though, providing an incredibly visceral warfare experience told from all sides, which is exactly what Nolan was going for. It's nice to have him lean off the endless exposition for once. Nolan proves that you don't need a whole bunch of blood and gore in order to provide an intense war film. A lot of the horrors of war are captured by how the characters perceive it and how they handle it. You don't need people trying to keep their guts from falling out or gross stuff like that when you actually feel like you're taking cover on the beach from shrieking German planes or trying to escape a sinking ship. The sound design is appropriately deafening, with every gunshot and explosion ringing all throughout the theater. You get the true World War II experience, tinnitus and all. It's just too bad that the dialogue was so poorly mixed, because I could hardly understand what any of our characters were saying amidst all the chaos. One could argue that it does accurately represent the warfare experience, but I would still like to know what our characters are saying. If you can, I highly recommend checking this film out in IMAX, especially in 70mm film, where you can really take in the glorious picture and sound. The massive aspect ratio allowed for some incredibly gorgeous landscape shots of huddled soldiers along the beach with dead brethren around them, or planes that look like tiny specks against the big blue sky. There are moments of aspect ratio changes, but it's never too distracting, as Nolan reserves it for certain scenes, never detracting from the overall spectacle. Unlike some directors in their films. The action is beautifully shot and captured with great intensity, where when it's coupled with the incredible sound, you're always right in the thick of it with the characters. It's an absolute masterwork on a technical level. Dunkirk is a very satisfying film from Christopher Nolan, both as a screenwriter and a director. It really feels like he's taken his next step in evolving as a filmmaker. While the unique format of the story did sometimes confuse and detract from the emotional investment, he still did a great job at building characters through minimal dialogue and pretty much entirely through their actions. He also did what he does best, in delivering some of the best spectacle to experience on the big screen all year with glorious picture, sound, and effects. He actually reminds me a lot of James Cameron because although his films are flawed, they're always wonders to behold. So, with all that, I have to give Dunkirk 8.5 beaches out of 10. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the new review. Click below for the full text version, and I'll see you next time.